Yes, folks, it's Tales from the Jails with John G. Sutton. I'm going to talk a little bit today about the different systems that have worked over in the prisons over the years. We go back to the Victorian era. There was a system called the silent system, which was the most predominant prison that it was working at was Pentonville in London, where they had all the inmates were kept absolutely silent and may not converse with each other. Even the chapel in which they held regular services had partitions between each place along the pews, so that whilst you were undertaking morning service, all you could see was the chaplain addressing the congregation, of which, as a prisoner, you would be part. Of course, there would be prison officers around that. It would have been difficult to riot in those conditions, wouldn't it? Unlike Strangeways, which the Strangeways prison chapel was wide open. It was just like a theatre, probably seated about 300, maybe 400, I don't know. But during the Strangeways riot, it was instituted in the chapel. Now, the chapel is located, if you look at the front entrance to Strangeways, the Twin Towers, go at the front on Southall Street, go through the gates. You can't now because they're all shut, but if you could, directly ahead of you would be what's known as F Wing. Now, right at the top of F Wing, because it's a sealed unit, it's like a hallway, but above F Wing is the chapel, and you gain entrance to the chapel from the four landings, because there's a door at the top of F Wing, and you go into the chapel there, and it comes down, so it's on a slope, yeah, the chapel itself. But the system at Strangeways was basically, it was rough, it was overcrowded, it was 3 to a cell, and at times they ran out of cells and they used the gymnasium, put blankets on the floor of the gymnasium with a mattress, and that was it. How disgraceful is that? And nobody seemed to have the courage to say, listen, the prison is full, because it had a certified capacity of something like 1,400, and it had over 2,000 inmates in it at one point. You certainly couldn't run the silent system like that, could you? Also, another strange anomaly that many people will not know about, but those of you who have been in the prison system in the 60s, 70s and early 80s will know that on the cell doors there is a sliding bolt that prison officers put across. Now, there's a reason for that, because during World War II, when Britain was being bombed, they didn't lock the doors of the prisoners at night. They simply shot the bolt across, the sliding bolt at the top of the door, shot that across, so that was the means of holding them in the cells. So that in the event that the prison was bombed, then they could run along the landings and quickly slide the bolts back. Now, you didn't know that, did you? Also, the keys that the prison officers have. There's 2 keys. One of them is for all the gates, and one of them is from all the cell doors. Now, a strange thing happened at Wormwood Scrubs, and it's pretty hard to believe, really. A prison officer went off duty at the weekend and went to catch a train at Euston Station. And when he got to the train station, realised that he'd still got his prison keys in his pocket. He'd failed to hand them in on his way out. So what you'd normally do is you'd say, right, okay, cancel that journey, I've got to go back to the prison and hand them in. They haven't been in anybody else's hands. No, he didn't do that. He took the keys off his keychain, which it was in his pocket, and he hid them in a water closet in a public lavatory at Euston Prison. And when the cleaners were cleaning the place, they found these keys and handed them in to the police. And the police took them back to Wormwood Scrubs. So they had to change all the locks and all the gates and all the cells, because I believe he got dismissed from the service for misconduct. But misconduct seems to be the rule of the day these days. I know I'm rambling a little bit here, but there's 500 Metropolitan Police officers on restricted duties because they're being investigated for serious complaints of sexual misconduct. 500. And throughout the United Kingdom, there are currently over 2,000 police officers on restricted duties because of allegations of sexual misconduct. I mean, we realise that these are allegations, but they must be relatively serious allegations. When I think back to the 60s and 70s, when I was associated with the police and my brother and father were police officers, the idea of one police officer being charged with sexual misconduct was unthinkable. It just wouldn't happen. The actual access to getting into the police, it was like getting clearance from MI5. It was really strict. When I joined the prison service, same thing. They checked out my grandparents, checked out my parents, my brother. Everybody got checked. Imagine that. It was, and even my wife's family. Nowadays, they have advertisements. Seriously, I've seen them on YouTube. Have a look, yeah. Prison service recruitment videos, yeah. They've got one with a young female saying, join the modern prison service. Anybody can be a prison officer. Really? Well, it's quite obvious that anybody can. Because what they've got at the moment are allowing, drugs are rife in the prisons. And that's the system that won't work, because they've got to curtail that. But how do they curtail it? Seriously. I mean, there's something seriously amiss with the system. I mean, I have a friend who, this female prison officer, by the way, in a male prison. She only worked in the system for 10 years. When she started off, she was a single mother living in a rented flat. So she joined the prison service, and now she's got a 4-bedroom detached house, a brand new Audi sports car, and a daughter's at private school. Now, how does that happen from a prison officer's wages? Use your imagination, people. That's the modern system today. That's a song dinger, but it isn't a song. You'll be relieved to know. I'm just going to read you a little bit of a poem by one of my favourite poets, T.S. Eliot, Terence Staines Eliot. This is a poem that is really thought-provoking. The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock. I'm not going to read all of it. I'll just read you a little sample. So if you are interested in poetry, then no doubt you can go and have a look. Let us go then, you and I, when the evening is spread out against the sky, like a patient etherized upon a table. Let us go through certain half-deserted streets, the muttering retreats of restless nights in one-night cheap hotels and sawdust restaurants with oyster shells. Streets that follow like a tedious argument of insidious intent to lead you to an overwhelming question. Oh, do not ask, what is it? Let us go and make our visit. In the room, the women come and go, talking of Michelangelo. The yellow fog that rubs its back upon the window panes, the yellow smoke that rubs its muzzle on the window panes, licked its tongue into the corners of the evening, lingered upon the pools that stand in drains, let fall upon its back the soot that falls from chimneys, slipped by the terrace, made a sudden leap, and seeing that it was a soft October night, curled once about the house and fell asleep. And indeed there will be time for the yellow smoke that slides along the street, rubbing its back upon the window panes. There will be time to prepare a face to meet the faces that you meet. There will be time to murder and create, and time for all the works and days of hands that lift and drop a question on your plate. Time for you and time for me, and time yet for 100 indecisions and for 100 visions and revisions before the taking of toast and tea. In the room the women come and go, talking of Michelangelo. That's a few of the opening stanzas from T.S. Eliot's The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock. Tales from the Jails with John G. Sutton, and if you're still watching, don't forget, folks, get my book. It's out there on Amazon. Bye now.